Welcome back, mateys, to a new episode of Tenacious V's podcast. Every episode, I grab some friends and some drinks, and we discuss some amazing women throughout history. This week, we talk about the unequivocally badass Xing. She was a pirate lord in China and just ruled all of the seas. She was really conquering everything and getting herself in there. She eventually even gained amnesty because no one could stop her. So that's pretty awesome. So she is a pirate. So we have to give some explicit warnings for this one. You know, there's a little bit of violence and brutality talked about in this episode. So just, be aware of that. And I hope you really enjoy. Ni hao, Pangyo, and welcome back to a new Tenacious V's episode. This week we're going to be discussing Xing.
Xing? That sounds super familiar.
I think as soon as I start talking about her, you guys are going to know. So Ni hao is Chinese. Yeah, okay.
Wait, do I just get a guess without any knowledge at all?
Yeah, man.
Is it the Chinese pirate?
Yes.
You know, with a large fleet. Yeah.
The largest, I think, naval fleet of pirates at the time, right?
The largest naval fleet of countries at that time.
Oh wow! In general.
They allude to the idea that she's one of the pirate captains in those Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah. That character is based on her.
So,
yeah. So Xing was born Shiljianggu, and she was born in Guangdong province of China in 1775, ish.
Okay.
Or I guess we know the year, but not the date, and that might not have been her birth name. This is the early stuff is pretty guessed upon. You know, she wasn't born super wealthy, so.
I feel like that was the heyday of a lot of pirates.
Right around the American Revolution. The end of it. Or I guess still, yeah.
Actually, the heyday of pirates, as far as Caribbean pirates and stuff, ended around the 1730s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were most active from 1690 to 1720.
And so this was
I'm just massively interested in pirates.
No,
yeah.
This is super helpful for this. Awesome. So this is towards when that's all starting to taper off. We're ahead of ourselves.
But so in China, the Chinese pirate climate was a little bit different. You know what I mean? So this is you it's hard to think of pirates in a non-Caribbean sense. Even without the Pirates of the Caribbean, Blackbeard was in North Carolina and the Caribbean and England and stuff. You know what I mean? So and a lot of the famous pirates are British. So that's where most base pirate knowledge comes from, and you kind of have to throw a lot of that out the window for this because she's Chinese, and it's those rules just don't apply.
Okay.
So she was actually started off as a Cantonese prostitute or madam called Shi Huangku. She worked on a floating brothel in Guangzhou for most of her young life and young adult life. And then in 1801, at age 26, she married a pirate named Zhang Yi, and he was from a notorious pirate family that went back to the mid 1600s.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Really cool. So she married into that, and he was already doing pretty well as a pirate. He had a good fleet and family ties with other pirate alliances, and it's a very structured society, which is in all senses Caribbean or Chinese, or Asian. So it's not very well known. There's a few theories as to why the two would have married. Some say she was just his favorite prostitute, and some say she convinced him to marry her because she wanted power, and some say it was just he wanted a wife to make an heir to blah blah blah, and so it's kind of just the whole thing.
Just disputed.
Yeah, it's just
historically.
like not very well written about or documented or anything.
Mm.
Does anybody say they were in love?
Yeah, like at any point, yeah. Is there any nice ending?
They had like a good partnership, you know what I mean? They
Okay.
weren't like like they ran things together. It was a 50-50 ownership. They had a written contract that she had everything too. Like half of it was hers, and she ran things like alongside him. She went out pirating with him. Like she instilled rules just like he did. So like it was a equal partnership in that sense.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
She also got 50% of all their plunder and control of like the men and fleets and everything. So yeah,
Okay.
she's like a pirate general basically.
Dope.
Colonel? I don't know the rankings. Um, so and in South Asia or South China at the time, there was no stigma against women pirates or like women on ships or any like that's not bad luck.
Nice.
So
Okay.
that definitely was less of an obstacle. So they adopted a son who was like he's an adult at this early like 18ish at this time, 17, 18. And so they adopt him from like this fisherman guy, so he's just like a fisherman's son, and they take him, and I guess him and Zhang Yi were like lovers,
Oh, okay.
and then this was like really common practice to like adopt an adult son like the in this sense because he's like legally their kid,
Right.
but then like he ended up being like lovers with both of them. So, but it's like all, and then he's like their inheritant. Like
Right.
he's the heir to all the pirate throne, basically.
So why would he need to marry her to have an heir if that was gonna be their game plan?
I don't know if a
Adopt
single
weird
man can
sex
adopt.
slave.
I don't know if a man can adopt a kid, but it was like consensual on his part too. He wasn't like a slave. Like
Okay.
I don't.
It was a
It was a
normal
thing. It was
incestuous.
so they also actually had two like biological sons together. Chung Po was the adult son they adopted, and so they were Zheng Yi Shi and Zheng Huang Shi. Zheng Yi was known as like a massive military force, and he used his power to bind like rival Cantonese pirate fleets to his, which was like just created this like massive super army of pirates basically, which is pretty dope. So he already had one of the biggest fleets in history, and they were called the Red Flag Fleet. But then on November 16th of 1807, 6 years into their marriage, he died, and he was like 39 to like 42 or somewhere in there. So he either died in like Vietnam or just in a shipwreck. It's like unknown.
Okay.
But Ching Shi just like immediately started going for his role as like pirate lord because it was supposed to go to Chung Po or Zhang
Right.
Po.
Yeah, because he was the full heir.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so she ended up gaining the trust of all the rivals and then getting them to like recognize her power and authority as the leader so that they would like fear her basically. And then she also made sure to form alliances with her son since he was the heir, you know?
Sure.
So she like made sure that he was kind of in her pocket and then got everyone else to like respect her. And then she also played into like a lot of the captains were already really loyal to her and her husband. So she just like played into that and was like, yo, like why not just keep like you know me. Come on, buddy.
Had a pretty solid foundation.
Yeah.
When the death happened, not challenged, but questioned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it could have been thrown into turmoil, but she just went around and made all these alliances and like built on previously established relationships to like move things along and kind of just put herself into that position of power. And then she also just made herself so like indispensable to the fleet that they just couldn't do it without her. Like they just needed her leadership.
Sure.
She also made big alliances with like the more powerful members of Zhang Yi's family because he was like from the pirate family. So she made like stronger alliances and made it more of we're just a team here. So then by the time all was said and done, she had such a massive fleet that she actually had to delegate most of the day-to-day management to her second in command, which was Cheng Po or Chung Po. which was the one they adopted.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was just like a lot of pressure on her to get a man in charge. Like it was just kind of a big thing to have like just a figurehead as like getting respected by like other armies and like attackers and stuff.
So it wasn't an issue for their fleet. It was more of an issue for
Yep.
confronting others
Uh-huh.
and like making.
And like sending delegations and stuff like that. Like so on paper they made Chung Po the like pirate lord, but really he was just kind of her military guy. Like she was the one running everything and doing
He
it
was
all.
the figurehead. She was kind of just puppeteering everything.
Absolutely. But very obviously, like to her own fleet and everything, she was in charge, and
Right,
that was
yeah.
never like questioned, and they all respected her. It was a lot of like the new recruits. Like he would start off with like new recruits, and then be like, "You answer to her," you know. But like just to get them on board,
Right.
he'd kind of go out or making alliances and stuff. A lot of that was done by him, just as a face.
Yeah, now you're at sea, man. So this is, you're either gonna follow it or
Yeah, exactly. You don't really have an option at that point. You're already on the fucking ocean.
yeah, you can swim.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's sharks, but try it. So while she was in charge, their fleet just boomed. It was just fucking crazy. Like so much growth was happening. They were like capturing towns and villages along the coast. So they pretty much owned the entire coastline, and they were imposing like taxes and tariffs and stuff on the towns instead of the Chinese government. So like the people were paying all their taxes to the pirates that lived in the towns, and then they were like homesteading, like they built farms and they were like using other people's farms in the towns, and
Viking almost.
yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Conquering.
I bet that made some powerful enemies. Because power like that.
Mm-hmm.
It draws
It draws
attention.
a lot of attention.
Yeah, there was one village that they conquered. It was called Sanshan Village, and they beheaded 80 men and held all the women and children for ransom until they ended up getting sold into slavery.
Pirates.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
hella
Yeah.
pirates.
Very piratey.
Very pirate.
Fucking crazy. So then in 1808, she was captain for only a year at this point, and she had become such a force that the Chinese government was trying to take her down. So they like sent naval ships, military, like they like sent people after her, and she just like crushed them.
Oh, down, yeah.
She ended up taking all of their warships for her fleet. So then the Chinese government was trying to fight her from fishing boats.
Holy fuck.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So now she has a bunch of Chinese military ships or Navy battleships. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah, you're in charge at that point.
Yeah, definitely the ocean's
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're sailing those seven seas. So while the government was like attacking her, she was also faced with like actual threats from other rival pirates that were like pissed about how well she was doing. And just, you know, they're pirates, they just attack everything. It's kind of in their nature. So there was one group which was called the Opote, and they were a former ally that had like ended up turning against them, and now they were working for the King government, which was the Chinese government at the time.
Mercenaries.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
So at one point, their fleet, the Opote, they forced them to retreat from the coast. So they had to like dock their boats, and they had to like
Xing's
go.
Navy.
Yeah.
So.
She got forced into retreating.
Right. So they actually, these mercenaries, I forget their name, but they actually, with the power of government behind them, did have a strong enough fleet to push these guys back.
A little bit.
Okay.
For a minute, and then she had reinforcements that came. You know what I mean? So like,
sure, just keep them off the coast.
for just one part of the coast. It was
Sure.
like they kind of like had one town surrounded and got the big fleet that she was a part of right there, and then they like pushed them back, but then they called in reinforcements, and like I said, just they got it back. She also ended up defending herself against the Portuguese and British Navy and like bounty hunters. And I was looking at this on the map, and it just makes no sense as far as like where everything is.
Well, my point.
This
This is
is
just
so
after.
far.
This is just after the American Revolution. So the British have got to be taking a pretty big hit at that point, right?
And
Like,
yeah,
I mean, it was supposedly a big deal was that the French Navy crushed part of the British naval ships
mm-hmm.
that were supporting. I mean, yeah, so the French were supporting the Americans under the Revolution.
Yeah, we had allies through that, and then
And at that time, a lot of ships were destroyed by French battleships because the French Navy was fucking super powerful at the time too.
was insane, right? It was like they had one of the biggest like armadas.
Yeah, them or Spain.
Them in Spain, the
Yeah.
Spanish Armada was like huge, and but I mean, the British took a massive hit just to their military forces in general.
They were already suffering from war. Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of
'cause, I
money
mean,
went into that.
Money, but then and just men. So
Definitely.
sending men back out.
Yeah, the king
So,
was
like,
insane at the time.
So I mean, them trying to now. All right, now you're gonna go fight pirates.
Yeah.
Listen, man, we're fighting.
Well, maybe that's
settlers
why.
and
Maybe that's
pirates.
why the Chinese were able to hire them was because they needed that money, so they were willing to
Oh,
help support.
I guess so.
But
All
were
right.
these other pirates, or was it the government that was helping China fight Qing Shi?
so separately, the Portuguese government like sent a naval fleet. The British like a few times.
Uh-huh.
The British government, the Chinese government, and the Portuguese like all battled her.
Oh, shit.
And then I believe at one point they like teamed up, or at least I think the Portuguese and the Chinese might have teamed up,
Mhm.
and they like attacked her, and she ended up like coming out fine every time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I would venture to say gaining ships each time.
Sure. If there's anything salvageable in the sea, you take it.
Yeah.
Well, and they would just like board other ships and
Yeah.
just take them
Exactly.
and throw the men that dissented overboard. And another thing that she was actually famous for was if they would like board a ship to take it over, and they would like anyone that didn't like comply with her wishes, she would nail their feet to the deck and then just beat them.
Jeez, that's brutal. You think at that point, once you were boarded, just after seeing how well that's gone, like, just the minute you were boarded, you just set fire to the ship. Just, at the very least, we're all going down, but you ain't getting stronger. Like,
There might have been that situation might have come up,
yeah,
like dumping your arsenal, something like that. Just anything to
just prevent them from getting, because at that point, you've already lost.
right. And yeah, that what they salvage would only strengthen. But yeah, so
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah. Captain's orders.
Yeah.
Captain's orders. A lot of pirating. That's all very piratey, though, too.
Yeah.
Super pirate.
Yeah.
Hey, we're taking all your stuff. We're just holding people ransom.
They also captured a bunch of like British sailors and some really high up people in the East India Trading Company or the East India
Wow.
Company. There's like 30 names for that thing.
The largest company ever. Ever.
Yeah, they ended up colonizing a bunch of India and Hong Kong.
Everything, yeah. Like, it just, even just like, what is it, adjusted for inflation, it's the largest company ever to exist. Yeah, they're insane. So, I mean, that's a big hostage.
So in like Pirates of the Caribbean, they're the ones that are having Jack sign the paper that he'll turn coat and be a bounty hunter for other pirates rather than to continue pirating, which is like a massively common act at the time. Like that was their thing, was they would like try and, because pirates were such an issue for the British Navy especially, that they would like take down ships, steal ships, blah 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 all the time. And so they just like couldn't even keep up, and they were, like you said, they were like helping with other wars, and there's all sorts of shit going on, and it's the fucking 1700s, like no one's very advanced at this point. But so it was like a huge thing to like,
Seafaring.
you'd like pardon amnesty for the pirate if they would like bounty hunt for you.
Sure. Almost conscripting in a different way.
And it's probably just easier. Like, all right, man, well, we gotta hunt one less.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you go.
that too. So at this point, her fleet is so big that it's actually color coded. There was red flags, which were the lead fleet, And then it didn't explain what the rest of them were, but they also had black, white, blue, yellow, and green flags. It was like, you didn't need that many colors. Like, you got a lot going on.
Black flag of Shih.
So when Zheng Yi was running things, when they first got married, he had about 200 ships. So then by the time he was dead and she had been running things for like a few years, she had around 1,800 ships and 50 to 70,000 pirates.
Holy shit.
Damn.
Yeah. And then like all the people in all the villages on the coast are under her control because she's the one they're paying taxes to. She's the one they're like, like everything, all the goods are going through her. Like she owns all the import areas and everything, so she's got farms. There's like children.
She's running an economy.
Yeah. She's got a world power at this point. So I would say her success is for sure due to her like cunning and just the drive for power that she had. She just kept going, just always like doing shit. But also she was like really strict and a very strategic pirate lord. She was like extremely focused on running everything like a business. Like you're saying, like she was running an economy. This was like she was running a country. And that's how she ran things. Well, and on the land too.
Yeah, well, on the land as well.
Yeah, she had troops on the land. You know what I mean? This was like the most organized pirate economy, like civilization. It's just crazy. Like I said, she had some form of taxes, farms, and levies in all occupied towns, and then there was an ad hoc government where pirates were like highly protected by laws, and they also paid taxes. So,
Really?
yeah,
The pirates were paying taxes.
on their bounty. All plunder had to be presented to the fleet and registered before distributed, and then whichever ship had brought the bounty in kept 20%, while 80% went to the overall fleet's collective fund. But I'm imagining that since it's like a tax thing like this, like, yes, they're stacking wealth, but I would imagine that they're also like paying to fix everyone's ships and like providing food and shelter. You know what I mean?
Fresh
Like,
water.
Well, everything, yeah, because I mean, you got to send it back to the crops that
Yeah.
come back to you. I mean,
yeah, so they're
it
definitely like
makes
making
sense.
roads and like I'm sure they are probably like bettered a lot of this area.
Yeah, I mean, you see that still in a lot of criminal organizations of that mass. Like when you look at cartels, the better economies, and actually just like build up neighborhoods in the same way. Like you're doing this, and it is criminal, but it still goes back. I can see that.
Definitely. So her like protocols for the prisoners was really fucking weird, especially for like female captors. So ones that were ugly, just go free, live your life, you're good. The pretty ones, however, if a pirate wanted them as a wife, he could just ask and yeah, sure, she's your wife, that's cool.
All right.
But they were bound to be faithful and always care and provide for them. So like that was like written into the pirate code.
Like the pirate had to be.
The pirate had to like
Yes.
always care and protect for the woman they captured and like made their wife. So it was like she always had to be like provided for, have food, shelter, water, basic needs,
And he had to be faithful.
Yeah, and he had to be faithful. Rape or unfaithfulness were punished by death.
Slavery. That we're iffy on slavery, but rape and what would that be? Adultery. Big no. I mean, rape's a big no-no. Adultery's a pretty big no-no.
She knew what was that.
I don't know about murder, but yes.
So deserters ended up being hunted down, and then they had their ears cut off.
That's not surprising.
No.
Any sort of, any sort of backing out from, especially at the time, desertion.
Yeah.
That was. I'm surprised its ears cut it off and not.
They would walk them
drowning
in
or
front of the
a gap in
town
the plate or
too.
something.
Like they'd like walk them in a
Humiliation.
line. Yeah.
Were they brought back to the crew, or
Mhm.
were they just like well, now you're not part of it anymore?
No,
Yeah, no, we were-
they'd bring them
captain
back
of
and
the
like
crew.
walk them in front of everyone with like showing off their cut off ears and shit.
And then make them go back to work. Like that's what I mean. Like they
I
were
don't know.
brought back to
Maybe.
the crew.
Probably, I would
in
imagine.
some fashion, if not something, you know.
Maybe
if-
they
if
became
not
the
their
slaves.
I was gonna say, if not their previous job that they had before desertion, I imagine it seems likely that they'd go back to the captain and crew of the ship and be dealt with accordingly.
Yeah.
Captain, as he said, yeah, reassignment. You know, swabbing the deck, whatever.
Yeah, cooking food. I don't know.
Yeah,
something
like that. But you know, obviously they
better
weren't
job.
using them to kill them, so
Yeah.
or killing them for it. So I imagine if they're gonna cut off ears, that's and humiliate them, they want them to live to serve another purpose.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and then it was probably
Serve
well
another
known at the
purpose.
time too. So then, if they tried to leave again, people would know that they were like part of
Oh,
it
if
and
they're a
deserted. You
deserter,
know what I
yeah,
mean? So then it was
definitely.
people would probably be scared that the pirates would come after and just kill everyone.
So it'd be like maybe it'd be a citizen arrest situation, so you can seek favor for capturing a deserter kind of thing.
Something
Okay.
like that, or just everyone
'cause I
would be
mean-
too scared to help them or
Right,
take
they
them in,
wouldn't-
so they
exactly.
wouldn't be able to do
They mark
anything.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even the whole humiliation thing, of course, is just its own fear tactic.
Mhm.
That
Put you in your place.
yeah, like all right, you see what happens, everyone, when you leave, kind of thing. Like, of course, you want that, but yeah, if they're meant to live, then you're probably right. They're probably meant to serve a purpose. After
If they're
that,
not killing them, they want to do something.
Yeah. They also did the basic, just like flogging, clapping in irons, quartering, beating, whatever.
classic. Oh, torture.
But like, due to all of this, her nickname was the Terror of South China.
Yeah.
You know, you just have to mention the fucking nails in the feet fucking thing. That's
Yeah.
pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Nailing them to the deck. It's like, this dude is in the fucking way of my gunning station. Did you have to nail him down here?
Yeah. Just hit him till he's not in your way.
Yeah, exactly.
Sound good? I guess. I don't know.
Push him over.
Push him over.
So I totally forgot to mention this earlier, but when she married Zhang Yi, her name changed to Zheng Yi Sao, or wife of Zheng Yi.
Okay.
And she was okay with that.
We're back to that.
The wife of.
Wife of.
What? Yeah, wife of Diego.
After this.
84.
She was wife of Zheng Yi for a while, and then she changed her name. She's got like 6 names throughout the story.
I think that's a sign of somebody who's doing really well.
Xing
Keep
Shi
moving on.
is the final one.
Alright, so I thought it started off as Xing Shi.
No,
Oh, that's
No,
right.
no,
No,
no.
it started. Yeah, that's right.
it was Shil Zhenggu.
Shizangu. That's right.
So a lot of people thought that Xing Shi might have been smuggling opium, but it's just as likely that she just made her fortune with pillaging, robbing, and taxes and like tariffs.
I mean, when I think about it and what we've heard, she's making money every way she can. And, you know, why toss out opium as a possibility?
I'm
That's
not
like a
saying
major
she
trade in China.
didn't sell opium. I just don't think she would have made it a thing. You know what I mean? Like,
It was
she's
probably
probably
the
like
same
here,
as
like, hey man, yeah, I've got some opium from this ship. I'll sell it to
spices
you.
from this one, gold
Yeah.
from this one.
Like, I don't
figure
think
it was
she
just
would've-
another trade commodity, honestly. to them.
Exactly, but I don't think she was like actively part of like making it a big thing in the country.
Well, I don't know.
Like,
Why
I
not?
think-
Why not? Because if it's such a plentiful crop and it's easy to do that, and she had farmers there doing
High
this,
demand.
and it's in high demand, and it's easy to once
Just
someone buys
another
that,
trade good.
it's and it's one that sells itself.
Yeah.
Why would you not
I mean,
try to go for that and even farm it to move it?
You got farms.
You got farms, you got farmers, you got everything you need. No one to tell you or regulate you. Why would you not?
It's a cash crop.
It is a cash crop because people will continue to come back for it. That's
I
why
mean, yeah.
drug dealing still is such an easy. Yeah, I don't want to say easy, but like it's a gig where drugs sell themselves, and this is one. Opium will sell itself because you're hooked. You're gonna keep buying it constantly
Okay.
going somewhere. If you have the
Well, then,
stranglehold,
in that
come
sense,
on.
though, she's not smuggling it. She's just openly growing and
Transporting
selling
yeah,
it.
totally.
But so the
Growing and
smuggling
moving.
would be like her bringing it to other countries then. So then
I'd buy that. But if she was the one growing it and then moving
but
it,
yeah,
it's
she's
all
probably just
profit.
selling it within China and shit. Like, why take the risk of bringing it to another country?
Because
And
it's
you know
not
what
a
I
risk
mean?
with
Like,
a fleet that size.
Because it's not a risk with a fleet that size. It's a flex, if anything. Because she can. Just another power move.
all right, guys.
That's the way I see it. I'm not saying I have really any
It
evidence
honestly seems
backing
like a
it.
smart move.
But
No,
It seems
you're-
like a pretty smart
Honestly,
lady.
you guys are making really good points here.
Seems like a smart lady. And
Yeah.
that would be a
Yeah.
smart move to make.
very,
Make a lot of money.
Very powerful. Like it just seems like a power move more than anything
Yeah.
too. Like
Hmm.
kind of thing.
You're right. Okay.
Boss bitch.
All right. So speaking of being a boss bitch, since none of the governments that cared could do anything, no rival pirates could do it. She pretty much owned all the pirates. Like she's the pirate lord of
Yeah.
South China at this point. Like this is her shit. So no one can do anything. Everyone's pretty much just like, well, we're just fucked. Like like this is gonna become not China and it's just gonna be Qingxi now and just shit. So the Chinese government decides to like grant amnesty basically. So they like enter negotiations with her, but they are talking with Chung Po since he's like the leader on paper.
The face,
He's
yeah.
the leader.
Bad boy.
And so they were doing well, and the Chinese official was called Xing Bai, and they were like everything was going all right and everything, and they were gonna offer amnesty to all pirates, like under her reign. So she would just chill and not do just a rampage. But then it hit a standstill because Zhang Bai wanted pirates to bow to China, and they couldn't agree on what to do with like just the massive reserves of loot. They were struggling with the booty, one could say.
Booty pirates.
Booty pirates.
Booty pirates. So at this point, Qingxi is just like, fuck it, and goes down there by herself. There was one account where she brought like 17 illiterate women and children, but that was it. They were like, she brought 17 illiterate women and children, never mentioned them again. So I have no idea what their purpose was.
Was it maybe the
Just like a selling point,
I was
like
gonna say, was it maybe the young women who chose to go as they pleased and were like, hey, we're gonna go with the pirate queen
Dude,
thing?
I literally have no idea. There are so many theories for what they could have been, but I just they were just I read like 4 different versions of this, and they were just like in this one, just casually mentioned the one time. So it was just super weird. Anyways, goes, meets this dude. He ends up granting her full amnesty, and she's unarmed too. Like she just goes in there, just strolls in. Hey man, you Zhang Bai? I'm Qingxi. What's up? Let's get this figured out. She gets full amnesty. She kept almost all of her loot and a small fleet of ships for herself. And then, like, roughly 200 to 300 of her most dastardly men were punished by the government out of, like, 80,000.
Right.
So that's, like...
This fucking small percentage.
It's literally not even 10%.
Yeah, but she still sold them out.
I honestly think it was just the ones they'd caught or whatever. Just random ones that kept pirating afterwards or
Coincidentally, they all have 1 year.
Oh, those guys.
shockingly. They were all in the same battle, and this one guy was really good with a sword. He just shaved the ears right off. Okay. So, after everyone has been granted amnesty and the 200 to 300 pirates have been punished, and this is just punished, by the way, like the just like in the England or Caribbean or whatever, being convicted of piracy was a death sentence.
Right.
But they didn't even kill them, and these are like the worst of the worst pirates, you know. So they just like put them in prison or flogged them or whatever. Yeah, they didn't even capital punishment.
Slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy. But they all get amnesty, and then Qing Shi and Chung Po end up dissolving their mother-son relationship through the government. Like, they have
So was this a good thing? Like, or was it like,
to get married.
oh,
Okay, Woody Allen.
But they adopted him as an adult. It's not like she raised him.
the
Like, he
relationship's
was-
weird. I don't, yeah.
Okay, I'm
yeah.
not saying it's not. I'm just like, just. Anyways, so they end up getting married, and she ends up taking her money and her fleet and then setting up a little seaside mansion complex thing. And then he goes off to hunt. He basically goes and like hunts other pirates, which is kind of whack in my opinion.
Yeah, that's pretty lame.
Turncoat.
Well, yeah. Incestuous turncoat. Weird dude.
It was a normal thing at the time.
Yeah.
But in her mansion thing, in the town or the whatever, she had like multiple gambling rings and like basically like little casinos set up, and then smuggling outfits and brothels. And she just kind of chilled until she died in her sleep at age 69 in 1844.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, though. Actually, she lived
But
it.
that wasn't the life.
That's a pretty solid like time frame, especially since what was her
Zhang
husband?
Yi,
Zhang Yi. Like since he died at 32.
39 or 42.
42. Okay, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
She made it all the way to 69. It's pretty solid.
So, especially for like a well-known famous pirate, like holy
Yeah.
shit, 69 years old. That's like a modern lifespan. Like, it's a little short for nowadays, but like 70 years old is not bad, you know? And then like you got to give the era, like you got to take that into consideration.
David Bowie didn't make it that far.
It's yeah. And
He was
she
doing heroin too.
she died peacefully. Like, yeah. Yeah, she's pretty cool. So Chung Po and Qing Shi ended up having 2 kids together. They had a son named Chung Yu Lin, and then a daughter who no one knows when she was born or what her name was. So, yeah, sad.
Alright, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Chung Po and Ching Shi, but it's totally killed off. Fucking the hubby at the time.
Zhang Yi.
Zhang Yi.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might have, man. Now it's gotten a little
It's a
fishy.
mysterious death, isn't it?
Well, it's he either died in a shipwreck, so he was obviously not on a ship with one of those two, or on a trip to Vietnam and he was like attacked.
By someone that Chung Po hired.
Maybe. But I mean, I think either way, he wasn't with the 2 of them at the time of his death.
Of course not. That would implicate them in murder.
Yeah. That's just basic murder.
You guys make this a fun crime show.
You're the one who brought up pirates today.
You did.
I love
That's a
pirates.
criminal
Which
organization.
is a fun crime show. So
That's exactly what it is. This is a criminal organization, and that's just
I
real
said
fucking
it in
weird.
a happy way. It was a good thing. I'm glad it's a fun crime show. Anyways.
Patricide's not super fun.
Is that where you kill your dad?
yes.
Yes. It's a bad thing.
I'm not advocating for anything that these people have done. I'm just telling you what they did. So she was in retirement for 34 years, which is crazy. That's like, that doesn't even happen nowadays. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess it does if you're like a billionaire.
Which
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she was doing fine.
And she owned like a few gambling houses and a few brothels, and then she also ran like salt trading, which was a big thing at the time.
Oh yeah.
And then during the first Opium Wars, which were in 1839, she was a military advisor for Lin Zexu. I that's my best on that one. While battling the British Army, so like the Chinese were battling the British, and she was like the military advisor for the British government.
For the British?
The Chinese, my bad.
Yeah.
It's the British, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. That's kind of how she ended her life out, was just being the military advisor.
For the government.
She's doing something right.
Yeah. I mean, she obviously did, yeah. They knew that, oh, you bested us once. Maybe you can help us now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, you
Huh.
built a badass army, like, help us out. I bet if I had looked into it more, there would be some sort of battle technique left over from her or something, you know, like,
Maybe some naval maneuvering or what have you, but yeah.
yeah, or some sort of
Yeah.
positioning or attack method. If you want to get any other like different perspectives on her, there's a couple like TV shows and movies and stuff. So there's a book called The History of Piracy by Philip Goss, and it tells her tale. And then Jorge Luis Borges did a fictionalized short story of her, and it's called The Widow Ching Lady Pirate.
Very cool.
And then there's also a few shows with characters based on Shih. There's The Captain of Destiny and Red Flag. And then there's a Pirate Quest, Pieces of Hate in RuneScape. And there's a character based on Shih called Madame Shih. And then she's also in the Curse of Blackstone quest. And then both times she gets captured and then like escapes. Sorry, the spoiler alert. She gets captured and then escapes and like gets out and is fine. But it's like an allusion to like how awesome she was and how she was just like able to get out of any rough situation and like always just like did fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Good on that. That's pretty size.
I fucking love the idea of a fucking super powerful fucking pirate fleet. And she was top cream of the crop, you know?
Yeah, just a criminal organization that turned itself into a fucking economy.
Yeah.
And a true threat not only just to where they started, but just to other nations. And it's pretty badass.
It's quite impressive. Especially with the hunt for pirates at the time. It's really, you know, not only like the diplomacy with the other pirates, but just the expansion as well.
True
really
long-term plans.
It's her life was really interesting, and just she took like an already thriving pirate fleet, you know, like 200 ships is a lot for a fleet at that time. Like that was already one of the biggest ones ever. And then fucking 80,000 men, fucking 1,800 ships. That's crazy. Qingxi. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you really enjoyed that one. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, you can give us a follow on social media at Tenacious V's Podcast. You can also email us with suggestions, questions, or comments at tenaciousvspodcast@gmail.com. And you can listen on Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. As usual, this episode was done by Will, Nona, and Johnny, and the music was done by Staple Milk. Come back next time.